Hey guys, JJ here, and with the ending of the Resident Evil 4 remake, there's a really good chance Capcom will be remaking Resident Evil 5 next. That raises the question, does Resident Evil 5 need a remake? So with that being said, let's get right into it.
Resident Evil 5.
The Capcom hype train can't be stopped. With successful remake after remake, the money that is being generated from tapping into fan nostalgia by re-envisioning some of our favorite survival horror games of all time, it only makes sense that Capcom would continue remaking classic games. Many fans, including myself, think Resident Evil Code Veronica is the most deserving of the remake treatment. Others think Capcom should remake Resident Evil 1 Remake again, and everywhere in between. While a Code Veronica would make sense due to the story featuring the return of Albert Wesker and the gameplay mechanics, the Resident Evil 4 Remake's ending highly suggests Capcom may be favoring diving back into Resident Evil 5 once again. So that begs the question, does Resident Evil 5 need a remake? Well, in my personal opinion, no. It holds up just fine. But I also thought Resident Evil 4 didn't need a remake, and I was pleasantly surprised with the one we got. Capcom is a business, and Resident Evil Code Veronica didn't do well in sales once released, for a variety of reasons. Resident Evil 5, on the other hand, is one of the top-selling Resident Evil games of all time. So let's say Resident Evil 5 is the direction Capcom would like to go. What aspects could be altered, added, or modified to improve the experience of the original game? We'll start with the controls and AI. Obviously, the controls are a bit dated in the original Resident Evil 5. You move in all directions with one joystick and look awkwardly in the other directions with the right stick. This could definitely use an update. The partner AI at the time wasn't the best, and if you played the game with a co-op companion, the experience was vastly improved. It's honestly my favorite co-op game of all time. The problem was, not everyone played the game with another person, so the experience was vastly hindered with the dumb AI. Technology has improved immensely over the years, and could greatly benefit the single-player experience. Moving on to the tone of the game, we'll use the Resident Evil 4 Remake as an example. With the RE4 Remake, fans of the original got to experience a grittier take on the game. While the game retained most of the essence of the original, environments, areas, and locations were given a darker, grittier, more realistic take. The same could be done for the Resident Evil 5 Remake. Going back to when Resident Evil 5 was first showcased prior to release, we get a look at our main character, Chris Redfield, walking through the dark back alleys of rural Africa. In this original concept, we see what appears to be more zombie-like enemies approach. It was definitely a more horror-focused tone. One of the biggest complaints about the original was the action-focused setting and gameplay. Much of the horror was lost. Simply slowing the game down a bit, adding weight to the characters so they're not unstoppable killing machines, and taking a bit more of a Resident Evil 2 and 4 Remake approach to the atmosphere would greatly benefit the overall game and please fans that prefer horror in their Resident Evil games. There was even a live-action campaign that dived deeper into the character trauma and PTSD Chris Redfield was suffering. Focusing more on the character development would also enhance our connection with the characters over the course of the game. Next up, we have the item shop and upgrades. Resident Evil 4 Remake did a fantastic job taking the collectible feature in the original and expanding on it. Hunting treasure, finding gems, then combining them for the best possible sales price was a great way to increase the need for backtracking, exploration, and replay value. Simply taking this feature and adding it to the Resident Evil 5 Remake would enhance the overall experience. With that comes the merchant. Resident Evil 5 featured a merchant-like character at the beginning, but he was quickly killed, leading to the merchant shop after every chapter. Reintroducing a merchant that appears throughout the game as opposed to the end of the chapter would fit well and follow the themes set in the Resident Evil 4 Remake. With the introduction of the merchant character and no longer having the need for chapter-based purchases and upgrades leads to the next topic, and that's removing chapters. Now, I don't mean remove chapters completely, but remove them in-game to keep the gameplay going. The best example of this is the Dead Space Remake. While playing, the game doesn't pause or show you a result screen when you cross into another chapter. Instead, the progress keeps flowing to feel like a more cohesive experience. Lastly, this leads us into the layout of the map. Having a traveling merchant, removing the need for chapters that break up the flow of the game, means we could have a semi-open world Resident Evil game that slowly opens to the player over time. Best examples of this would be the RPD in the Resident Evil 2 Remake and Chapter 4 of the Resident Evil 4 Remake. Aside from traveling to the laboratory in RE2, the RPD and its underground was fully explorable to the player. This meant backtracking for missed items items was something you could do at any given time. This also enhanced the experience of Mr. X pursuing you in random locations throughout. In Chapter 4 of the Resident Evil 4 remake, you could use the boat to travel to a variety of locations on the map. From fishing for bass, exploring a shipwreck, or finding the golden egg on the chicken island, all this was available to the player if they chose to do so. This exploration of the map added to the overall experience of the game. I also feel like this design of map layout is an integral part of the Resident Evil formula. Spencer Mansion, RPD, Raccoon City Streets, you get the idea. Resident Evil 5 Remake could greatly benefit from this map design. There's even a location in the original game that lets the player travel in an airboat to various locations to find items. Taking this idea and turning it into a central hub would be fantastic. Given that most of these gameplay mechanics have already been developed for the Resident Evil 4 remake, it hires the chance that Capcom will choose Resident Evil 5 as the next game to remake. We haven't even got to any of the story adjustments and how Capcom is creating a new line of canon in the lore, but that's just a few of my ideas on how the original Resident Evil 5 could benefit from a remake. I would still like to see a Code Veronica or an Outbreak remake before RE5, but Capcom may be choosing to stick with the numbered games in the series. If handled properly, I'm not against the idea of a remake, but now I'm curious to know your thoughts. Do you think Resident Evil 5 will be Capcom's next remake? If so, what aspects of the game do you think could benefit from the remake treatment? If given the choice, what game would you like to see Capcom remake next and why? Let us know down below in the comments and let's have a discussion about it. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and for all the latest Resident Evil news, make sure to subscribe. The Residents of Evil is a Patreon supported channel and also supported by our YouTube members. So if you'd like to become a member and unlock access to custom badges, emojis, and exclusive live streams, click that join button down below. You can join our survival horror community on Discord, link will be in the description, and I have the Duke here to tell you a little about our sponsor, G Fuel.
Do you have need of anything for the road ahead? The Residents of Evil has expanded its services. Perhaps you're in need of a little pick-me-up. I recommend the G Fuel. You can even get a fair discount if you use the code ROE upon purchase. And as always, we thank you for your patronage, stranger.
As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope to see you back at the Residents of Evil.